So good morning, everyone. Our report for today is all about the groundwater exploitation in the Philippines. And I am Ham Sobricarisiga, your assigned reporter for today. Hi, I hope you are to learn something wonderful and useful in today's lesson. So we have the table of contents. The number one, the introduction, the definition of the groundwater. The number two, we have the resources, which is the groundwater as a resource. The number three, we have the exploitation, which is the groundwater exploitation in the Philippines. The number four will be the insights. I'm going to hand you articles and case study with regard to our exploitation of the groundwater here in the Philippines. So number one, we have the introductions. Of course, we are going to introduce you here the definition of the groundwater. So the groundwater is replenished or recharged by rain and seepage from rivers. So always remember that when you hear something like water that comes from the rain or the raindrops or the seepage from rivers, that could actually be considered as the groundwater already. So it contributes 14% of the total water resource potential of the Philippines. Please notice also that the Region 10 has the lowest potential source of groundwater. Meanwhile, on the other hand, in contrary, Regions 1 and 7 have the highest potential. So Region 10 has the lowest, and Region 1 and 7 has the highest potential, and the remaining regions are in just moderate. So the groundwater is used for drinking by about 50% of the people in the country. It may be on the rural or in the countryside or in the urban or in the city side. So based on the water rights granted by the National Water Resources Board or the NWRB, since 2002, 49% for groundwater is consumed by the domestic sector. So the remaining shared by agriculture is the 32%, the industry 15%, and other sectors are 4%. So about 60% of groundwater extraction is without water right permits, resulting in indiscriminate withdrawal. So a high percentage, which is the 86% of piped water supply systems, uses groundwater as a source. So guys, just a reminder that the declination of the groundwater is not just because of the environmental issue, but also the over-exploitation, or what we call as the illegal exploitation of the groundwater, which is those that extract without the water rights permits. So next we have here the picture. So we have here the picture, which is the groundwater used in agricultural. We have here in the domestic sector, which is those that drinks the groundwater. I mean, those that uses groundwater as their drinking water. We also have here the water that comes from the industry. So we have here the number two, the resources. So we are making groundwater as a resource for everything. You have here the groundwater as a resource. So in terms of groundwater, the country has an extensive groundwater reservoir with an aggregate area of about 50,000 square kilometers. So data from the Mines and Geosciences Bureau show that several groundwater basins are underlain by about 100,000 square kilometers of various rock formation, and that these resources are located in. You have here the Northeast Luzon, the Central Luzon, the Laguna Lake Basin, the Cavite, Batangas Laguna Basin, the Southeast Luzon, the Mindoro Island, the Northeast Leyte, the Ormoc Cananga Basin, and the Agusan Davao Basin. So just look how abundant Philippines is when it comes to the groundwater. So here we all know that the Philippines has the abundant of the groundwater as a resource. So Philippines also uses different resources that will be extracted. The Philippines uses different groundwater that could be the lakes, the rivers, I mean, the lakes. Also have here the reservoir, or was known as the dams. Also uses the natural one. I mean, everyone is natural, but also have here the rainwater or the raindrops. The number 3, the exploitation, groundwater exploitation in the Philippines. So groundwater exploitation, we have here the proper exploitation of groundwater resources involves, apart from the location of suitable source, so the constructions of properly designed wells. So, you know, the success of the exploitation, or what you call this, the proper exploitation of groundwater, depends upon the suitable source or the suitable place that could be exploited with the groundwater. So, say for example, here in General Santos City, so we cannot actually, I know you already know this fact, but let me connect this one on how important it is to actually look for suitable source when exploiting groundwater. Here in General Santos City, we cannot actually build buildings that is six story above, because the force of that certain building cannot actually be hindi makaya sa ground. I don't know, but our chemistry teacher back then thought as this, na dili pwedeng mag-build og 6 story na 6 story and above na high building dere as GENSAN, kay we are surrounded by water, and dili siya makaya dili makaya ang force sa building na to sa lupa dere sa GENSAN. So the design and the execution of water supply systems and their maintenance is an integral part of the scheme of exploration and management. So, you know, you cannot actually just extract water from here and there, but you have to look for a suitable source. And also the design and the execution, you cannot actually execute a certain thing without planning, without designing, or without a certain, certain management on it. And exploitation could not actually prosper without the design or without the exploration itself. So the maintenance, the integral part of the scheme of the exploitation itself depends upon the exploration and management. And I think Claire De Leon have reported it already. So it is a report prior to my report. So the numerous problems of groundwater exploration and exploitation require systematic use of scientific techniques. So we have here the groundwater obstructing structures. So the groundwater obstructing structures are man-made, which collect and hold water for exploitation. So I believe na there is no exploitation that is not man-made. So everything that is exploited is man-made. So the groundwater obstruction structures, this is a man-made which collect and hold water for exploitation. The example is the dams that holds the reservoir. We also have the wells that holds also the water. We also have the pump that also holds the water. So everything that which is man-made that collects and hold water is what we call as the groundwater obstructing structures. So the common groundwater obstructing structures are dug wells, which I mentioned earlier, now wells, the dug-gum bore well, the bore well, the collector well, and the infiltration gallery. So we also have here groundwater wells. So the success of groundwater exploration program depends on the exploitation of it also. So the groundwater explored should be extracted by obstructing structures like dug wells and bore wells, adopting proper exploitation techniques. So I think now we cannot actually survive college without without the student and without the teacher itself. So it's a collaborative effort between the student and the teacher in order to survive in college, because I believe that no man is an island, and so do with the exploration and the exploitation. The exploration cannot be success, it is only a theory without the exploitation itself. But also without the exploitation, without the exploration, the exploitation or the, I mean, the exploitation itself would not also be prosperous enough. So it is a collaborative between an exploitation and an exploration in order to have the groundwater wells. So this is actually a collaborative effort between those two. So the exploration will design and the exploitation would exercise the design that the exploration have made. So the well design and construction depends upon many factors like, always remember this one, that when exploiting water and when exploring groundwater, we are considering these factors like hydrogeological setup, the topography, rainfall, and the techniques adapted, and so on and so forth. So we have here the types of water wells: the drilled, the driven, and also the dug wells. So that, when I was still in elementary, I know what I only know is that every wells is just the same. The process is just the same. Kanang nagakalot lang, then taran, you have already the wells. But it is only then that I realized that there is a lot of process when making a wells. You have the drilled, the driven, and the dug. Just to add the information, I am going to explain what are these three. So we have here the drilled wells. The first well, which is the casing materials, uses steel or PVC plastic. So here we have the PVC pipe and the stainless steel pipe. So those are the materials or the casing materials that will be uses when creating drilled wells. So it is installed by well drilling contractors. So there is no other one that would create drilled wells or that would install drilled wells, but only the constructors of it. So much more common than the other two, which is the driven or the dug wells. And of course, since it uses the steel or PVC plastic, so it is most the sanitary well type than the other two. So the next one here is the driven wells. So it's installed by property owners. So makita ninyo sa picture, it can be seen on the picture vividly na this is actually an example of a driven wells. So if maka-adto mo sa mga countryside, rural areas, or even sa city ng mga squatter keme, so makita ninyo dito you can actually see na there are a lot of the driven wells because this is very accessible. This is common around lakes and high water table areas. So pag makaadto mo puting bato or any barangay here in GENSAN, dili na sila mawala bomba. Kaya ang puting bato man, this is near to to the sea. So seaside lang ang puting bato, so there is a lot of pump there, or what you call this bomba. And it is 35 feet deep, limited yield with 7 GPM or less. So it is more susceptible to surface contamination than drilled wells. So this pump here, it is only intended for panghugas, pang bath, and pang wash your clothes, but it is not actually advisable to drink it because the pumps or these driven wells is actually more susceptible or more prone to surface contamination than the drilled wells. So the drilled wells is actually advisable to use when you are going to drink the water. So unlike the other two, the dug wells is popular from even those prehistoric times. So and it provides an economical means of irrigation and water supply to small areas. So they are feasible in porous or fissured rocks where the water table is shallow. So this is an example of a dug well. So just also a little bit of information since to understand well the dug wells. So way back then, katong elementary pa ko, always may ga-add to sa Pulumulok, which is dito as sa Pulumulok is kanang bukid-bukid naman jud siya nga part, no? So there is no source of water, there is no line of water or kanang mga gripo-gripo and all. So we really have to bring our own drinking water. And dili man mo pwede ipang bath and ipang laba ang amo ang drinking water because those drinking water is intended to be drunk only. So ang among ginahimo is since dito as sa Bulumulok there is rivers, so that is what we call as the silway. So naa may mga rivers dito, connected ang rivers, then what we are doing is that mga tumi dito as river jud mismo, then we are digging beside we are digging on the river banks or what we call as the banks or beside the river. So dito sa banks nagakalot mi dito og mga nagabuslot mi dito agakalot in order for water to show. Pag mag-show na ang water, then we are putting stones beside it to actually filter out tong mga hugaw-hugaw nga parts sa water. Then before na mo siya gamiton, ipasit na mo siya og mga 5 minutes para maglimpyo ang water. So if maglimpyo na ang water, pwede na may maligo or pwede na may maglaba, maghugas, and everything. So that is actually an example of dug wells. So the water table is shallow, pagkalot pa lang nimo na ano yung water. So and that is very feasible in porous kay dali lang kayo siya himuon. And it is very famous way back then at the prehistoric times. So dug wells are normally excavated by hand. So tanggihimo namo na it is only it takes only hand and maybe a stick to actually have a dug wells. So the dry materials are held up baskets on ropes or cables. A good dug well can deliver from 100 to 300 square meter per height of water. So while small dug wells easily yield about 20 square meter per height. So dili lang only famous ang dug wells sa mga rural side of the country or the countryside, but also makita nimo ni siya sa city. Like sa Puting Bato, it is not only pump that are famous sa Puting Bato, but also these dug wells. Kay, sa ato ang, this one, driven wells, it would cost actually 15,000 for an owner to build driven wells. But on the dug wells, it only takes the effort, the hand, and the excavating material to actually have the dug wells. And I have witnessed it myself katong naghimo ang akong uncle og kanang balloon or this is what we call as balloon in GENSAN. So naghimo siya balloon beside sa ilahang balay since ang water table dito is also shallow kay dool siya dagat, so naghimo siya balloon. Then it only takes 3 people para maghimo og gingani. Nagkalot lang sila, then pag nag-show na ang water, then dito na sila mag-stop og kalot, then ilahan ng sementohon dayon. So that's how available the dug wells is if gusto ninyo og kanang water resources, groundwater resources para dili kayo magdako inyong bill sa tubig. So that's it. So let's actually watch this video. Let's watch this video. So this video is an example of a drilled wells. Smell si Kuya, sana all. So that ends the video. So that is an example of how, of how Filipino exploits water here in the Philippines. So that is an example of drilled wells. So in the number 4, we have here the insights, the articles, and the case study. If you are very interested with the exploitation of groundwater here in the Philippines, you would actually read this one, which is the Improving Water Securities in the Philippines. So this is the link. But if you cannot search the link, then just search the title of the case study, which is Improving Water Securities in the Philippines, and also the groundwater supply in Metro Manila, the distribution, the environmental, and economic assessment. This is the link, and this is the title. This is the link, and this is the title of the case study. So that ends the report. I hope you have learned something today. And thank you for listening and being with me.